The first Devil May Cry is a very interesting game for a number of reasons. The first one, of course, is that it was supposed to be the Resident Evil 4, one of the first revisions of Resident Evil 4, but then it turned into its own IP. It was also made during a period of time in which Capcom was very different than what it is today. It was a company that was not afraid of risk, even though they liked to rehash sequels. I mean, at that time they were already a meme with all the various Street Fighter releases they they had in the 90s. But that didn't stop them from actually pursuing more interesting and innovative projects. Thanks to also to the people who were working there at the time, to the main guys like Shinji Mikami, Hideki Kamiya, that were and other names that were working at the time at Capcom and were leading the creative process. I think it's also a very fascinating project as a whole because Devil May Cry as a series, not just the first one, is one of the many examples of Capcom's bad side. Because the positive side was the creative one, but the bad side at the time was their complete lack of vision for the future. Because it wasn't uncommon in this period of time for Capcom to mismanage their properties. There have been various examples during the years in the early 2000s and late 90s. For example, as you already know, Street Fighter 3, they almost killed the IP with that game by making a game without all the almost any of the previous cast members that made the series famous, other than Ryo and Ken. The first version of Street Fighter 3 only had Ryo and Ken from Street Fighter 2. All the other characters were nobodies. And that almost killed the series. Another example is, of course, Devil May Cry. Devil May Cry 2 was such a disappointment, honestly. People were so hyped about Devil May Cry 2 after the first one. And then Capcom gives the project to I don't know who, but to people who didn't know what they were doing. Even though they put Itsuno, the guy who actually ended up directing Devil May Cry 3, to salvage the project a few months before release. Of course, he couldn't do much of anything, so the game still came out as a shit show. And yeah, that soured a lot of people on the series, me included, because I did buy Devil May Cry 2 at launch, full price, $60 in, I think it was 2002 or 2003, I don't remember. But yeah, when Devil May Cry 3 came out, I didn't buy it day one. I actually waited for a pretty hefty discount on that game. But what can you do? Once you tarnish your reputation, I mean, this is why you have to be careful with what you do with your own IPs. And you can also argue that, yeah, Resident Evil 4 as well was kind of a fuck up, in the sense that I don't think it was a good idea as a whole to make a sequel almost completely unrelated to the previous games, because other than Leon, Ada, and Wesker being in it, it has no reason to be called Resident Evil 4. It could have been like a spin-off, and nobody would have bat an eye. Just like Operation Javier was a spin-off, it was not a numbered entry. And Resident Evil 4 was the same, it should have been a spin-off. But I did talk about this in my Resident Evil 4 video, if you wanna go check it out. The video where I talk about the original and the remake. So this intro just to illustrate some of my general thoughts on Capcom. and also on Devil May Cry. But yeah, talking about Devil May Cry instead, the first one specifically, because this video is about that one. I mean, what can you say? It's a game that created a genre. Because before this game, the action genre really was not a thing. There weren't really many examples of this concept being done well. Think, for example, the Castlevania games. Castlevania games in 3D before Devil May Cry were always considered flops. They were not as good as the 2D ones. They were missing something. The gameplay was not as good and tight as the 2D entries, for example. But other games failed to recapture a good experience in 3D as opposed to what they were doing in 2D. And like I said, Castlevania is one of the many examples. And in fact, the first Castlevania game on PS2 takes inspiration heavily from the first Devil May Cry. Just to let you know, that shows you that how much Devil May Cry 1 influenced the industry. And also, I think the first Ninja Gaiden, the Ninja Gaiden reboot in 2004, also takes inspiration a little bit from Devil May Cry 1. Of course, it was obvious when you make a game like this one, people are gonna take inspiration or straight up copy you. It's just natural. And Devil May Cry 1 is special because, of course, no, it's not the best one in terms of gameplay, but it still has its own very definite identity. Because it's a bit action game, a bit survival horror. One thing that renders it unique is the fact that it even has the death scenes for the main character, kind of like the previous Resident Evil games did, with the character being mauled or eaten, for example. They are not like super easy to trigger, but yeah, they did happen to me back in the day when I was playing the game back on the PS2. In terms of gameplay, it's also different from the other Devil May Cries, especially from 3 and onwards. Because in this time, of course, the series was still in its infancy and they didn't really know what they wanted to do exactly. So the gameplay is focused on a so-called action stylish basis, in the sense that the game rewards you for pulling moves that look good, but there aren't that many moves in the game to begin with, so of course the combat system is kind of limited. But I don't think it's particularly detrimental, because this is not really the kind of game where you can do combos over and over and over like in the sequels. Because in the sequels, like Devil May Cry 3 and 4, and I don't know 5, I haven't played it yet, but Devil May Cry 2 and 3, and onwards, the focus becomes more about the combos, and the enemies are kind of there sometimes. They become punching bags for the player to show off. While in the first one, I don't know, I think they were, the enemies overall were more aggressive, a bit more aggressive, and in fact, you can't really just stay there and pull some crazy combos like in the other games in the future sequels, which makes Devil May Cry pretty unique in this sense, because yes, it's a stylish action game, but it also rewards practicality. So it doesn't penalize you for being very quick and snappy with your decisions and even spamming the same moves over and over. Because actually, when it is played at a high level, this game is full of this stuff. It's full of spamming the same move over and over. because it's very practical. It's in a sense it's more similar to Ninja Gaiden Black, Ninja Gaiden Reboot than the future Devil May Cry games. And this is what makes it still interesting in my opinion, because I prefer this kind of approach. I mean, I like doing combos and such, sure, but I slightly prefer when a game doesn't focus too much on it and rewards, like I said before, being practical and not just wasting time showing off. Because it's cool and everything, but you can't always pull that stuff off if your enemies are aggressive. And yeah, just to note something, I think Devil May Cry 1 has the best designed enemies in the series. Even Devil May Cry 3 that always gets like praised for being a good game, which definitely is. I think when it comes to the enemy design, Devil May Cry 1 is better than 3. Because the enemies in 3 are, for the most part, very anonymous and lame. Another thing that distinguishes Devil May Cry 1's combat system compared to the other games in the series is that a lot of enemies in the first one have very easy and fast ways to dispatch them. For example, the shadows, which are one of the coolest enemies in the whole series, are shape-shifting masses of goo, let's say, or black goo that usually take the shape of some kind of panther. But yeah, they are shape-shifting enemies that will come after you in any way they can. And a very cool way to dispatch them, actually it's the fastest way to dispatch of them, is to jump on their spear right when it's about to impale you. You jump, and then you stay still on the spear and you shoot them with your guns, with ebony and ivory. And that's the easiest way to damage them to death, pretty much. And yeah, a lot of enemies in the first one have this kind of weak point system, let's say. And each time you discover a very effective strategy to kill an enemy, even to kill them faster with a critical hit, the game will save the new info you have discovered in some sort of diary section in the menu. So it's pretty cool. So even if you forget about something related to an enemy, the game remembers it for you, which is very nice. And it sucks because it's a feature that for the most part got lost. Bar a few exceptions, there are still a few enemies in the other games that can get killed faster, but there's not really, like, as far as I remember, I might be wrong, but Devil May Cry 1 was very heavy on this aspect. So, like I was saying before, practicality over being stylish. Now let's talk about a little bit about the difficulty, because this game was at the time pretty infamous for its difficulty, and the fact that yeah, I mean, it does remember a little bit Castlevania and the older Castlevania titles, not the Metroidvanias, but the stage-based Castlevanias were pretty hard as well. So this is another point in common with those games. I remember back then on online forums, there were a few people that were in fact comparing this game to Castlevania, mentioning how this is the true successor to the Castlevanias, and in fact, I would say I agree. This Devil May Cry 1 is a better Castlevania than almost all of the 3D Castlevanias that have come out, in my opinion. But yeah, without digressions, the difficulty. There are 3 levels of difficulty: normal, hard, and Dante Must Die. Actually, there's easy as well, but honestly, I don't consider easy because I never play on easy. And yeah, even on normal, the game is pretty can be pretty rough if you're not familiar with the strategies, especially the bosses. I would say, of course, hard is the most balanced mode. Dante Must Die can be a bit tedious, especially some bosses that have quite a lot of life, and you'll have to choose the right weapon. Otherwise, you'll probably get killed over and over because some bosses are very hard. Especially the last one, Mundus. Such a fucking bullshit boss. There is also quite a lot of RNG when it comes to Mundus, but yeah. Another aspect that I was unaware of up until not too long ago is that the European and American version are actually harder than the, the Japanese one. The Japanese one is the standard, pretty much. It's the version you also get in the HD collection. But back then, when the game released in the PAL and American territories, somebody thought that it was a good idea to make the game harder for some reason. So in the American and in the PAL version, you take 20% more damage and you deal 20% less damage. So the game becomes even harder and more tedious. The enemies take way more to die, and they can very easily kill you. In fact, it makes Dante Must Die such a chore to play in those versions because you pretty much die in 2 hits, even if even if you have full bar, you die in 2 hits, which is bullshit. And yeah, that was not the only change. They also changed the combat scheme. Like they did put melee on the circle button, jump on the triangle. It was such a dumb change. I don't remember if you actually gather Devil Trigger slower in those versions, but it may be possible. I don't remember. But yeah, so either play the Japanese version or the HD collection because that's the like that's what the original developers actually intended to be the maximum difficulty. Because there is always some people sometimes, this is not the first time it happens, especially for a high profile release, that they bump up the difficulty level. But in my opinion, only the game designer, like the game director, should, or at least people who work on the game should decide. So, because otherwise, who the hell are you? And in fact, this game is not fun to play in the American and PAL version. It's just too. Other than hard, the enemies take too much to die, and you die very easily, which is not what the game was intended to be. So, this is just my opinion. Now, let's move on to another section. Now, the story of the game of Devil May Cry in general is very easy, very simple. Dante is a demon hunter and he has a shop, and will take any job that people give him as long as it's related to his field, so demon hunting. And so he only takes those kinds of special jobs, like it's shown in the intro. Now, there's not much to say when it comes to the story of the first game. It's very basic, also because it was supposed to be Resident Evil 4, but it got changed at some point in the development. So it's very basic. There are barely any characters. The only like human characters, you can say, are Dante and Trish. All the other cast is made of demons, and mostly the bosses. So like Phantom, Mundus, Griffon, and Nilo Angelo, which is Dante's brother. I mean, if you ever played any Devil May Cry, either 1 or 3, you know that Nilo Angelo is Virgil. And I personally think that Kamiya and his team have done a good job with the first game when it comes to creating the universe, the character, and everything. I think Dante in Devil May Cry 1 is at his best because it feels like what it should be. He is mostly stoic in the first game. Sometimes, yes, you will crack a joke, but he is mostly a stoic character. Kind of like similar to what Leon is in Resident Evil 4, just a bit more cocky. The problem I have with Dante, managed by Itsuno, so after Mikami left, is that at times he feels like a clown. He acts too much like a teenager still. He has lost that aura of stoicness that the original Dante had. And he feels like too much of a... Some people call him Lewaki Pizza Man. He became too Reddit for my taste. Like, he's over 40 years old in Devil May Cry 4, for example, and he still acts like a teenager. Like, I think Itsuno did a good job in Devil May Cry 3 portraying a teenager Dante and also your relationship with Virgil. I think they really did a good job coming up with the whole dynamic between the two brothers. And I will also say that the writing is better in the third one. It's definitely better. In the first one, it's a bit cheesy. It feels like a lot as if it was an older Resident Evil title in that sense. It has also a little bit of Japanese drama in it with the whole cringe moment where Dante cries over Trish. And with a very infamous line, which you already know, I'm not gonna mention it.
I should have saved you. I should have been the one to fill your dark soul with light.
So, but I think that quirkiness is also part of Devil May Cry 1's charm. Because the aura the game has is unrivaled. No other game has managed to replicate it. No other game in the series has managed to replicate it. And I also like how Kamiya, with Devil May Cry 1, gave it a nod in Viewtiful Joe. I don't know if you ever played Viewtiful Joe, but in the PS2 edition of Viewtiful Joe, you can actually play as Dante as well. And one character in Viewtiful Joe, Alastor, is connected to Devil May Cry 1. There was some sort of interconnected universe between Dante in Devil May Cry 1 and Viewtiful Joe, with Alastor in it. Because Alastor is actually the demon that's inside the homonymous sword in Devil May Cry 1, which is actually one of the coolest designs ever when it comes to a sword, in my opinion. Yeah, that's the demon from Devil May Cry 1, which if you play as Dante in the PS2 version, I think the story is that Alastor is upset at Dante because he had to sell both Alastor and Ifrit, which are the fire gauntlets, because he had a debt to pay after Devil May Cry 1 was over. And I think that's the plot of Dante's story in Viewtiful Joe. But yeah, I really like how Kamiya put the two universes together in that sense. It gives the the whole narrative, an interesting twist in my opinion, as opposed to making the game ultra super serious. Because I mean, the story can be serious. Devil May Cry story can be serious, but it can also be a little bit tongue-in-cheek sometimes, especially with the with the weird writing that Devil May Cry 1 has at times. But you could argue that this sort of interconnectivity between the two universes and also other Kamiya's game is part of how Kamiya makes games. Because, for example, Mundus in Devil May Cry 1 is depicted in the same way as the angels in Bayonetta. Pretty much giant beings that are covered in sort of stone, ceramic stone, but deep inside they are grotesque monsters, either made of goo or tentacles. And I think that's how biblical angels were actually portrayed, because there's different depictions of angels. Like there's the standard one that you see in media, but there is also a more primal, biblical one, and which I think is the one that Kamiya is inspired from. So yeah, Mundus is pretty much like an angel from Bayonetta in terms of design. And I think this contributes to, like I said before, to the whole coolness of making the game, all Kamiya's games interconnected in some little ways, some little nods here and there. And in terms of nods to the first Devil May Cry that were made in Devil May Cry 3, yeah, I'll talk about it even if this video is strictly about one, but I'm gonna talk about the series as well briefly, what I think about it. So, like, there are a few nods to Devil May Cry 1 in 3. For example, they have replicated perfectly in 3 the way the entrance to the underworld looked in 1, which is a really nice nod in my opinion. And of course, I mean, considering they had to come up with their own story in 3, there have been some retcons. Mostly, I would say the inclusion of the Rebellion's Word, that was not a thing in Devil May Cry 1, because Dante only had the Force Edge, and I think that was supposed to be his memento from his father, like the thing that his father left him. But yeah, starting from 2 and then retroactively in 3, they included this other sword, so that Dante will inherit the Rebellion and Virgil the Yamato. Even though if you go back to Devil May Cry 1, there's the Sparda skin you can unlock, and the Sparda skin has the Yamato starting weapon. And I don't remember if it also has the Force Edge, but yeah, it has the Force Edge and the Yamato. So they did some little changes here and there, but I think overall, like I have said previously, they have done a good job with Devil May Cry 3. Not with 4, but with 3, yes, they managed to get the series back on track pretty well. I will say Devil May Cry 3 is as iconic, if not even more, than Devil May Cry 1. Another thing that's very worth mentioning, in my opinion, is the music. The music is the best it's ever been in the series, in my opinion, because the music in the first game is quite different. It's tailored specifically to feel like music from a video game, as opposed to the music in starting from the third one, which they took more of a heavy metal approach, which I'm not a fan of. Like the melodies in the first one were just more inspired. The game is chock full of organ, like the organ playing in the soundtrack, in the themes, and it gives the game a way more cool tone than any heavy metal song could ever do, in my opinion. Just like you just have to listen to it to know, to feel how good it is, how well it meshes with the game atmosphere, which is like I said before, it was supposed to be a Resident Evil, so it's the atmosphere in the game is very dark, claustrophobic, dark, scary, and the soundtrack complements this thing very, very well.
You're right. I'm his son, Dante. Sweet dreams.
And in terms of sounds, the funny thing is that this game reuses pretty much the whole library of sounds that is found in the classic Resident Evils. The sounds, almost all the sounds in this game are from Resident Evil. Like the doors that opens and closes, the steps inside the water, and probably other things that I'm forgetting at the moment. But yeah, it's Resident Evil also in sounds. I also really like how the demons are characterized in the game. They really did a good job making the enemies in the first Devil May Cry iconic and memorable. Like simple concepts like Phantom, which is just a giant spider made of lava that also has a scorpion tail. Something so similar, but it's, I don't know, it feels very iconic, especially with the way he talks. Like as soon as you hear Phantom's voice, you say, I mean, at least I said, this is exactly how I expected him to talk. Like the way he speaks, it feels like it's someone who is on fire, someone who is fucking hot who is speaking, and in fact he is made of lava, of magma. And same thing with Griffon. I think, I mean, Griffon is it's funny because he talks super seriously, but Dante just tells him to flock off. Their first interaction is very funny to me.
Block off, Featherface, or you can stick around and find out the hard way.
Like, the writing is full of these little things, these little jokes. Dante being cheesy or straight up a bully to the enemies, which is very funny in my opinion. But like I said before, Dante can also be serious when the story requires it. Especially when he gets pissed off at Mundus, for example. And I like this Dante. I like Dante being angry. Dante showing off his more demonic side when the situation requires it. Which is also something that got a little bit lost in the future games. Like I said before. In the third one, yeah, he was a teenager. In the fourth one, he was playing around. He was nerfing himself. In the fifth one, I haven't played, but I assume it's a bit better in that sense. And related to this, there's a little bit of a bummer when it comes to this series, in my opinion, is that we never got a proper Dante game alone when Dante was at its peak, but done like properly after Devil May Cry 1, because of course Devil May Cry 1 was kind of an experiment. Devil May Cry 3 was a prequel, and from 4 onwards we got also Nero that took the spotlight away from Dante. I would have liked a proper sequel to Devil May Cry 1 in which we only had Dante being the main star, to show off all his new abilities at max power after the Devil May Cry 1, but sadly we never got it. Which, like I said, it's a bit of a bummer when it comes to this series, in my opinion. We never got a proper Dante sequel to show his life after and how strong he had become after Devil May Cry 1. 5 is not really like the same because, like I said, there is a Nero in it, so I specifically say like a Dante only game for this main reason. When it comes to extra content, the game has not really much in this sense. There are a few unlockables, mostly Sparda's skin when it comes to Dante. Like you can play as Dante dressed up as Sparda, or it's just you can say it's just Sparda, but yeah, it's a Sparda skin, and he's slightly stronger than Dante because he starts with the Yamato, which is a demonic weapon. So you don't even have to wait until you get Alastor to be able to turn into demon form, which is cool, I guess. And also there are secret missions during the course of the game. You enter the secret missions by usually by backtracking to previous locations. After you've completed a mission, you start a new one and you backtrack to, like, for example, a door, and you start a secret mission. There are a number of them. I think there are like between 15 and 20. I don't remember exactly. But yeah, they are, in my opinion, I think they put them in because they felt like the game was a little bit too anemic in this sense, in terms of content. In fact, the game is very short. The game is very replayable, but also very short. And I think they also realized that themselves. Like, this was a $60 game. Yeah, it's a good game, but it doesn't last very long. The first playthrough will probably take you anything between 5 and 6 hours, depending on how good you are at these types of games. But yeah, it's a very short game, especially if you know what you have to do, the strategies with the enemies and so on. Is it a bad thing? No, in my opinion, not. But it does feel a little bit half-assed in this sense, because there are quite a few flaws. Not just the game being short, like the camera as well. A lot of the time leaves a lot to be desired, because this game has a camera similar to Code Veronica, but the problem is that the action is very dynamic, and since this game has the moves that are performed by holding directional inputs, if the camera keeps switching back and forth, the direction you have to press for certain commands keeps switching, and it can become very annoying in certain occasions. In fact, this is probably the biggest flaw the game has, the camera. The lock-on also is a bit janky, in the sense that dual switch just at random sometimes. But I'll take this as the game being the first of its genre, so it's understandable that it's not perfect. In the end, the game is still very playable. It's older than 20 years old and it's very playable still. It's not very common that you have a game this old that still plays relatively well, in my opinion. It's definitely one of the best aged games from that era, from the PS2, Xbox, GameCube era in this sense. So even if the combat is simple, it's still fun overall. There aren't many weapons. I would say this is another flaw, because there are only 2 weapons. There is a third one, which is the Sparda sword, but it's just the same weapon as any other sword. The only difference is that its strings are slightly different. And I think it also deals slightly more damage compared to Alastor. But the problem with the Sparda sword is that you can't turn into demon form normally. You can only do that as a story event at the end, but normally you can't. And yeah, even in the videos I've seen of speed runs done on the highest difficulty, people never use it. It's almost always, actually always, Alastor and Ifrit. The fire weapons as well. Actually, yeah, there's more variety in terms of fire weapons, given the Resident Evil DNA that this game has. There's the classic Resident Evil configuration. So the handgun, the shotgun, the grenade launcher, and there's another weapon, like a demonic weapon, the Nightmare Gamma, I think it's called. But yeah, it pretty much uses your devil meter to charge a potent ray of demonic energy that bounces all over the level, all over the room. I mean, it can be useful, but honestly, you're better off using the other 3 weapons, in my opinion. It's the Nightmare Gamma or Beta, how it's called, I don't remember. It's mostly a gimmick weapon, in my opinion. Can be useful, but you're better off using your meter in another way. When it comes to the combat, yes, there is also another type of combat in the game which I don't think many people like at all, which is the underwater combat. I think it was included just as a way to break the pace from the regular action the game has to offer the player, but I don't think people I don't like it either. I mean, it's not bad. The underwater combat is not bad per se. It's just it feels incredibly dull. It is snappy, it is playable, but it's just there. I don't dislike it particularly because shooting things underwater doesn't feel bad. Actually, I would say I like better Devil May Cry 1 when it comes to the underwater action compared to Ninja Gaiden Black. Ninja Gaiden Black underwater levels feel a little bit annoying in that sense. Meanwhile, Devil May Cry 1 underwater combat is definitely snappier and faster, and also shorter. In recent times, instead, Hideki Kamiya has been seen claiming to be interested in remaking this game, which is an interesting thought because I don't think I've ever seen him stating the same in regards to any of his other games. I guess he must really like Devil May Cry as a concept. I mean, he did make Bayonetta, which is very similar to Devil May Cry in concept, so it makes sense. And I mean, I would be lying if I said I don't think it's an interesting idea to remake Devil May Cry 1, especially if the original director will be back on the job. But honestly, I don't think this game should be remade, because I don't think what made it special can be recaptured. This game is a product of its time, of the culture of its time, and the technical limitations and everything. It was sort of lightning in a bottle, you can say. And also, I don't think Kamiya really has the same energy, the same determination when it comes to games. I don't think it will come out as good as the original. Probably the combat will be better, the camera will probably be better, sure, but I think the tone of the game as a whole will suffer greatly from a modern remake, especially if you consider that it will most likely be made with the Resident Evil engine, RE engine. So yeah, no, thank you. So to conclude, I think this game is still deserving of being played today. It has aged relatively well compared to its peers of the time. Of course, like I said already, it's not perfect. It has a lot of flaws, but honestly, what game that is more than 20 years old does not have flaws? I can't think of anything. So it's, of course, it's not a game for everybody. But I also think it's a game that deserves to be played in its original form without waiting for an eventual remake. Because it has an incredible charm. This game has incredible charisma all around. It has that weird mix of elements from Resident Evil, but also it does its own thing. But it also feels a little bit survival horror with all its spooky atmosphere. Dante feels like a sort of a superhero, but it's not really a superhero. He's a cool motherfucker. But yeah, it's good all around. And if we consider the whole series, so from 1 to 4, because I haven't played 5 yet, I will put this at least in second spot. You can argue Devil May Cry 3 is the best, probably, possibly, but I would say 1 is up there. It's between 1 and 3. It depends on your preferences. The best game. So yeah, play this game if you haven't. If you have played it and you haven't played in a while, replay it like I just did, because it's really worth playing in my opinion. Also, as a testament to what we have lost during the years compared to that era of gaming. So it's a nice memento from a different time, which deserves to be remembered and conserved for the future generations. Now, before I close, I want to open up a little parenthesis on the possible future of the series, just to let you know my thoughts in this regard as well. So, like I said, I don't think Devil May Cry 1 remake is a good idea, but since this is not a good idea, it's probably most likely what's gonna happen. Another possibility would be Devil May Cry 6, of course, with Dante and Virgil, this time playable from the start. Possibly this is also another... Probably the obvious next step, I would say, in terms of sequels. But what I would like personally is a prequel with Sparda protagonist, directed by Kamiya. Yeah, you can say, yeah, it's never gonna live up to the legend of Sparda, whatever. I would like to see what they come up with. I wanna see what Kamiya comes up with. Even though, yeah, I can say I think they should have done it 20 years ago, but you have to take what you can get. I also think they made a mistake by letting Dante not have a kid, and instead they gave a kid to Virgil, which is, I don't know, it doesn't feel like Virgil will be able to, I mean, will get in that situation to begin with, but who knows. So like I said, I think the Sparta prequel is the most interesting option between the bunch. But I don't think they will make it, because Kamiya has said that he's more interested in a remake. So yeah, but we'll see what the future brings for the series. I hope it's good things, because this is a good series, like I said, and it deserves a continuation of some kind. So as usual, let me know your thoughts, guys. Hope you liked the video, and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye bye. Also put a like and subscribe. Yeah. Bye bye.